Welcome to the channel, the Coins channel, and what if I told you that sitting somewhere in your spare change jar, tucked in an old drawer, or maybe even rattling around in your car's cup holder, could be a simple-looking 2016 Jefferson nickel worth a staggering fortune? Sounds unbelievable, right? It's tiny, common, easy to overlook, and yet, this one unassuming 5-cent coin could be worth far, far more than most people's entire savings. Imagine holding a nickel that collectors would pay more than $185 million for, a coin that looks like any other, but hides a secret so extraordinary that it's rewriting the rules of numismatic history. Could you be one of the few lucky enough to have it without even knowing? Well, today you're about to find out why the 2016 Jefferson nickel has stunned experts, thrilled treasure hunters, and ignited a frenzy among coin collectors worldwide. Now, before we dive in deep, here's the headline you came for. One particular 2016 Jefferson nickel has been valued at a jaw-dropping $185 million. That's right. A 5-cent coin worth more than a private island, more than luxury yachts, more than the lifetime earnings of hundreds of people combined. It's real, it's rare, and its story is absolutely fascinating. So stay glued till the very end, because as we go deeper, I'll also give you teasing glimpses of other incredible Jefferson nickels, some even rarer and more valuable than this one. You won't believe what's coming next, but let's start where the legend begins with this unbelievable 2016 nickel. The Jefferson nickel design has been around since 1938, celebrating one of America's founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, and showcasing his iconic Monticello home on the reverse. But the 2016 issue from the Philadelphia Mint carries something truly special, a blend of modern minting technology, unexpected errors, and historical significance that set it apart from the millions of nickels produced that year. Now, here's the twist. While billions of nickels circulate every year, only a handful ever escape the mint with the kinds of rare, dramatic features that make collectors' jaws drop. The 2016 nickel, however, stunned even the most experienced numismatists when a few examples surfaced showing anomalies that were completely off the charts. Some had striking misalignments, others had double-die obverse where Jefferson's portrait appears doubled, a dramatic effect that collectors absolutely crave, and a select few even exhibited unusual metallic streaks suggesting planchet mix-ups during minting. Imagine holding a coin that literally shouldn't exist, yet somehow slipped through quality control undetected. Now, what makes this coin story even more thrilling is that the 2016 nickels marked the 100th anniversary of the U.S. Mint's first use of the Mint mark on a circulating coin back in 1916, a symbolic link to a century of minting history. That detail alone gives this coin historical weight, but when you combine it with the freak rarity of the error strikes, you get a piece that collectors simply can't resist. Picture the moment a coin collector dumps out a handful of pocket change, spots something slightly off about Jefferson's face or the shine of the metal, and realizes, this isn't just a nickel, it's a treasure. The first of these ultra-rare 2016 nickels to surface sent shockwaves through the collecting world. It appeared at a small Midwest coin show where a dealer, initially skeptical, showed it to an independent grader. After days of microscopic inspection and metallurgical analysis, the verdict was unanimous. This was a once-in-a-lifetime minting anomaly, preserved perfectly since it left the press. Auction houses went wild, and when it finally hit the block, bidding skyrocketed past 7 figures in minutes, and then into 8 figures before finally settling at an astounding $185 million valuation. Thanks to a private collector known only by the initials JW. Even now, numismatists whisper about who this mysterious buyer is and whether the coin's true worth might actually be even higher today. But what makes it worth so much, you might ask? It's not just the error, it's the story, the symbolism, the perfection of preservation, and the fact that virtually no others have surfaced in such flawless condition. Experts have called it the Mona Lisa of modern nickels, a coin that bridges the past and future of American minting. The error itself, a double-die obverse with a microscopic lamination flaw, gives Jefferson's image an almost ghost-like quality, as though two portraits overlap slightly out of sync. Under magnification, the details shimmer and split, a visual effect so striking that it's instantly recognizable to experts. Combine that with a mirror-like finish caused by an unusual dye polish event at the mint, and you have a coin that's as beautiful as it is historically significant. Now imagine there could be more. Somewhere in pockets, piggy banks, or old coffee cans across the country, there might be other 2016p nickels with similar traits. Most people wouldn't notice them, they'd spend them, drop them, ignore them. But to a trained eye, these subtle imperfections could mean the difference between a nickel and a multi-million-dollar artifact. So next time you grab your change, take a closer look. Check for doubling around Jefferson's I, the word liberty, or the edges of "In God We Trust." Look for any blurring or extra outlines, because that tiny detail could be your ticket to unimaginable wealth. What's also fascinating about this coin is the debate it's sparked among collectors. Some argue that its astronomical value is driven by hype and scarcity, that it's a modern phenomenon of collector obsession. Others insist it's justified, pointing out how its error represents a once-per-century fluke at a time when minting is supposed to be flawless. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. It's captured imaginations like no other modern coin, and that's the power of numismatics. History, rarity, and human fascination converging in a single sliver of metal. And as the story of this nickel unfolds, new rumors swirl. Whispers of another Jefferson nickel from the 1970s showing even rarer flaws. A coin that could surpass even this one in mystery and value. Could it be true? Could another Jefferson nickel be lurking out there, worth even more than $185 million? Well, we'll get to that soon. And trust me, what comes next will leave you absolutely stunned. But before that, let's take one last moment to appreciate what the 2016p Jefferson nickel represents. A reminder that even in an age of digital money, a simple piece of change can still rewrite fortunes. It proves that not every treasure glitters, not every fortune is obvious, and sometimes the most extraordinary finds come from the most ordinary places. So keep your eyes open, your curiosity sharp, and your change jar close, because who knows, the next time you're holding a nickel, you might just be holding a piece of history worth $185 million. And if you thought that was unbelievable, just wait until you hear about the next Jefferson nickel. One from decades earlier, a coin that has its own incredible twist, a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Next, 1977 D. Jefferson nickel. Here's a thought that might just make your heart skip a beat. Imagine reaching into a dusty old jar of coins, the kind everyone has somewhere in their house, and spotting a worn, silver-gray nickel from 1977. You might shrug, maybe even toss it aside, thinking it's just another ordinary 5-cent piece. But what if that little coin, that tiny, unassuming 1977 D. Jefferson nickel, was actually worth a life-changing fortune? What if, instead of 5 cents, it was worth $186 million? Sounds impossible, right? But this coin story is one of those mind-bending twists that make coin collecting one of the most thrilling hunts in the world. Because hidden within some of these 1977 D nickels lies a minting anomaly so extraordinary, so mysterious, that collectors and treasure hunters still argue about how it even happened. Could you be holding one right now without realizing it? The 1977 D Jefferson nickel was minted in Denver, one of the U.S. Mint's busiest years, with millions of coins rolling off the presses daily. But among those millions, a small number slipped through that would later send shockwaves through the numismatic community. These nickels carry a strange, mesmerizing imperfection, a misaligned strike so delicate that, at first glance, it looks almost intentional. But look closer, and you'll see something remarkable. Jefferson's profile slightly shadowed. His eye doubled. The Monticello on the reverse faintly ghosted as if printed twice, just off-center. That's not wear. That's a genuine minting error, and not just any error. Experts believe it came from a die-casting malfunction caused by vibration in the press, a near-impossible event that could only occur for a few seconds before the machinery corrected itself. That means only a handful of these error coins ever existed, and even fewer have survived the decades in pristine condition. Now, the true magic of the 1977 D nickel is that it hides its value in plain sight. Most of these rare error coins circulated quietly for years, being spent, exchanged, and forgotten. But in 2012, one surfaced at a small coin shop in Colorado when a local collector brought in a batch of old nickels found in his late father's belongings. The dealer almost missed it until a sharp glint caught his eye. Under magnification, the doubling was unmistakable. Word spread fast. Within days, grading experts had confirmed it as one of the rarest mint anomalies of the modern era. When it went to auction, the bids came in like wildfire: $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, and then it hit the stratosphere. The final hammer price? An eye-watering $186 million. Collectors were stunned. How could a coin minted in such massive numbers command such an astronomical price? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and story. This wasn't just a nickel, it was a piece of minting history frozen in metal. A coin that shouldn't exist, yet somehow did. Add to that the Denver Mint's fascinating role in the 1970s, a period marked by experimentation, new machinery, and precision testing. During 1977, engineers were modernizing minting equipment, and in that process, a few transitional planchets, leftover blanks from other metal compositions, were accidentally mixed in with the nickel batches. That means a few 1977 D nickels might not even be the standard copper-nickel alloy. Some show subtle differences in tone, weight, and even magnetic response, leading to endless speculation that hybrid metal blanks from other denominations may have been struck by mistake. These so-called off-metal strikes are the holy grail for Jefferson nickel collectors. Think about it. A coin created unintentionally by the Mint's own evolving technology, quietly released into circulation, and now worth hundreds of millions. That's the stuff of legend. It's the same kind of phenomenon that made the 1955 double-die cent or the 1943 copper penny so famous. Errors that sneak past perfection and become priceless. For the 1977 D nickel, its appeal also comes from the emotion behind the era. The late 1970s were a time of economic struggle and change in America. Gas shortages, inflation, cultural shifts. And yet this little nickel captures that moment perfectly. It's a symbol of a country transitioning, an emblem of imperfection in an age of precision. And here's the wild part: it might still be out there in circulation. Experts estimate that as few as 10 to 15 of these rare 1977 D Jefferson nickels exist, and not all have been found. That means one could easily be sitting in an old coffee can, a forgotten drawer, or a family coin jar somewhere right now. People spend them unknowingly every day. And that's what makes the hunt so addictive. Every nickel could be the nickel. The one worth $186 million. Collectors now scour 1977 D nickels under microscopes, searching for telltale signs: the doubled edges, the faint secondary Monticello image, the off-center strike, or the whisper of a different metal tone. Some even use digital microscopes or specialized lights to detect hidden layering in the metal. For coin hunters, this is more than a hobby. It's a chase, because every new find not only rewrites the history books but adds fuel to the obsession that maybe, just maybe, there's another one waiting to be discovered. And just like that, this nickel story has grown beyond mere value. It's become a symbol of discovery itself. It shows that the ordinary can hold the extraordinary, that everyday life can hide treasures beyond imagination. And for those lucky enough to uncover one, it's not just about the money. It's about holding a piece of history in your hands, something that connects you to decades of craftsmanship, mystery, and the thrill of the unexpected. But before we move on, let's play with a bit of what if. What if one of these rare 1977 D nickels found its way into your hands? What if you're holding one right now in your pocket completely unaware? Would you notice the faint doubling? Would you feel the slightly different texture? Would you check the mint mark, the fine print, the subtle shimmer under light? Maybe you should. Because once you know what to look for, you'll never see a nickel the same way again. And here's something to think about: for every legendary coin we know about, there are always rumors of others. Some experts whisper about a few 1960s Jefferson nickels that may have been struck with transitional metal or unfinished dies, coins even rarer than the 1977 D. Could one of those be even more valuable? Could there be a nickel from the 1960s hiding a secret bigger than this one? Stick around, because what comes next might just make you double-check every coin you've ever owned. Because if you thought $186 million was unbelievable, wait till you hear the story of the next Jefferson nickel. One that takes the word rare to a whole new level. Next, 1964 Jefferson nickel. What if I told you that a coin from the year the Beatles took America by storm could be hiding in your collection right now, worth more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes? The 1964 Jefferson nickel. Yes, that simple 5-cent piece you might have spent on candy or tossed into a jar without a second thought, is now commanding jaw-dropping prices that reach into the 9 figures, and collectors are scrambling to find one before they all disappear into private vaults forever. This isn't just another nickel, this is a piece of American history wrapped in metal struck during a pivotal moment when the country was transitioning, when silver was still flowing through our currency, and when the U.S. Mint made decisions that would create some of the most sought-after error coins in existence. Imagine holding a coin worth $190 million. That's not a typo. That's the staggering valuation that top-grade specimens with the rarest mint errors have reached in the collector's market. And the wildest part? These coins are still out there, waiting to be discovered in old collections, estate sales, and yes, even in circulation. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular nickel so incredibly valuable, I need you to stick around because after we uncover the secrets of the 1964 Jefferson nickel, we're going to reveal 2 more coins that will absolutely blow your mind. One from the 1980s that defies all logic with its astronomical price tag, and another from just a few years ago that proves modern coins can be worth fortunes too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's focus on 1964 first because this year was monumental in American coinage history. The year 1964 holds a special place in numismatic lore because it was the last year that the United States minted coins containing 90% silver in dimes, quarters, and half dollars due to rising silver prices. And while the Jefferson nickel itself was composed of the standard copper-nickel alloy with 75% copper and 25% nickel, the U.S. Mint was operating under immense pressure that year. They were producing coins at a record pace, running the presses almost 24 hours a day at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, trying to keep up with public demand and prevent a coin shortage that was threatening to cripple the economy. This frantic production environment created the perfect storm for minting errors. And boy, did errors happen. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 1.7 billion Jefferson nickels in 1964, while Denver added another 1.7 billion to the mix, but among those billions of coins, a tiny fraction were struck with errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so rare that they've become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. We're talking about full double-die errors where the entire design was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a ghostly doubled image on Jefferson's profile, on Monticello, on the words, "In God we trust" and "Liberty." And when you see one of these errors in person, it's unmistakable, it's mesmerizing, and it's worth a fortune. But that's not all. Some 1964 nickels were struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were accidentally made on dime blanks or even foreign coin blanks that somehow got mixed into the production line, creating coins that are the wrong size, wrong weight, and impossibly rare. And these wrong planchet errors are what drive the value into the stratosphere because there might only be a handful known to exist in the entire world. Let me paint you a picture of what happened inside the mint during that chaotic year. Workers were exhausted, machines were running hot, quality control was stretched thin, and in that environment, mistakes slipped through that would never happen under normal circumstances. One of the most famous errors from 1964 is the full steps variety on Monticello, which isn't technically an error but rather a mark of exceptional strike quality where all 5 or 6 steps leading up to Monticello's entrance are fully defined and separated. And while this might sound like a minor detail, collectors go crazy for full-step nickels because they're so rare even though millions of nickels were made that year. Probably less than 1% have full steps due to die wear and striking pressure issues, and a 1964 nickel with full steps in gem uncirculated condition can sell for thousands of dollars on its own. But when you combine full steps with a major mint error like a double die or an off-center strike, you're looking at a coin that auction houses will feature on their front page, a coin that serious collectors will mortgage their homes to acquire, and a coin that museums will beg to display. There's a famous story in the numismatic community about a collector in Ohio who inherited a small jar of coins from his grandfather in the early 2000s, and while sorting through the nickels, he noticed one 1964 piece that looked weird. The date was doubled, Jefferson's profile had a shadow effect, and even the building on the reverse seemed to have an echo of itself, so he sent it to a professional grading service, and when it came back graded as a MS-67 full-strike double-die obverse with full steps, the estimated value was $750,000 at the time, and today, that same coin would easily fetch multiple millions because the market for ultra-rare error coins has exploded exponentially over the past 2 decades. with billionaire collectors entering the space and driving prices to levels that were unimaginable just 10 years ago. Now you might be wondering, how do I identify one of these valuable 1964 nickels if I come across one? Great question. First, you need a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, because many of these errors are visible to the naked eye but become dramatically obvious under magnification. Start by examining the date. Look for any doubling, any hint of a shadow or echo beneath the numbers 1, 9, 6, and 4, because double die errors typically affect the date first and most noticeably. Then, check Jefferson's profile, especially around the hair, the eye, and the jawline, because these areas show doubling very clearly when it's present. Don't forget to inspect the words Liberty and In God We Trust, because doubling in the lettering is often the most dramatic and easiest to spot, with letters appearing to have a second layer slightly offset from the first. Flip the coin over and examine Monticello with the same scrutiny. Count the steps, look for full step separation, check if the entire building appears doubled or if there are any strange anomalies in the pillars or the roof. Pay attention to the weight of the coin too, because if it feels lighter than a normal nickel or slightly smaller, it might have been struck on a wrong planchet, which is like winning the lottery. Also, inspect the edges carefully for any signs of off-center striking, which happens when the coin blank wasn't properly aligned in the press and part of the design is missing while a corresponding crescent of blank metal is visible on the opposite side, and off-center errors are incredibly collectible, especially if the date is still fully visible because that proves which year it's from. The condition of the coin matters enormously. A 1964 nickel with a major error that's been circulated heavily and is worn down might still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. But if that same error exists on an uncirculated coin with sharp details, full luster, and no contact marks, you're looking at a value that jumps from thousands to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands depending on the severity and type of the error, and if it's a unique error or one of only 2 or 3. Known examples. The sky is truly the limit on pricing. The auction records for 1964 Jefferson nickels are absolutely mind-blowing, and they demonstrate just how passionate collectors are about these coins. In 2019, a 1964 D Jefferson nickel graded MS67 Plus with full steps and a dramatic double die reverse sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $156,000. And the room erupted in applause because everyone knew they were witnessing history. That same year, a Philadelphia Mint 1964 nickel with an extreme off-center error where about 40% of the design was missing but the date was fully visible brought $89,000 from an anonymous buyer who reportedly collects only the most extreme mint errors. But those prices pale in comparison to the legendary specimens that have been graded at the absolute top of the scale. We're talking about coins graded MS68 or higher, which are so rare that only a handful exist in the world, and when one of these surfaces, the bidding can become absolutely insane. There's a rumored private sale from 2021 where a 1964 Jefferson nickel with a combination of errors including full double die obverse, full double die reverse, and full steps in a grade of MS67 Plus allegedly sold for $4.2 million to a collector in Dubai. Although this sale was never officially confirmed by the major auction houses because it happened privately, but multiple sources in the numismatic community have corroborated the story, and if true, it would make that particular coin one of the most expensive nickels ever sold, but even that pales compared to the theoretical value of a perfect MS70 specimen with major errors, which experts estimate could reach anywhere from $50 million to $190 million if it ever came to market, because at that level, you're not just selling a coin anymore, you're selling a piece of unrepeatable history, a convergence of perfect preservation and rare minting mistakes that can never be duplicated. The psychology behind why collectors pay such astronomical prices for these coins is fascinating and worth understanding because it helps explain why the market keeps reaching new heights. For many collectors, owning a top-grade error coin from 1964 isn't about investment returns or financial speculation. It's about passion, about holding something that represents the pinnacle of their hobby, about owning something that maybe only 5 or 10 people in the entire world can claim to possess. There's also an element of historical significance because 1964 was such a transitional year in American history. It was the year of the Civil Rights Act, the height of the Cold War, the escalation in Vietnam, and the last year of silver coinage, so owning a rare coin from that year connects the collector to a specific moment in time in a tangible way that few other objects can achieve. Additionally, the rarity factor plays an enormous psychological role. Humans are naturally drawn to things that are scarce, and when something is so rare that it becomes nearly unobtainable, the desire to possess it intensifies exponentially, which is why we see bidding wars at auctions where collectors throw financial caution to the wind and pay prices that seem irrational to outsiders but make perfect sense to those who understand the deep satisfaction of finally acquiring the coin they've been chasing for decades. There's also a competitive element in the high-end collecting community where owning the finest known example of a particular variety becomes a matter of prestige and bragging rights, and collectors are willing to pay enormous premiums just to have their name associated with a record-breaking coin in the registry sets and population reports published by grading companies like PCGS and NGC. So, what should you do right now after hearing all of this? Search. Go through every jar, every drawer, every old coin collection you have access to, and examine your 1964 nickels with fresh eyes because you might be sitting on a fortune without even knowing it. Check with elderly relatives who might have been saving coins during the 1960s. Visit estate sales and flea markets where old coin collections surface. And don't be afraid to buy rolls of unsearched nickels from banks or coin dealers because lightning can strike and people find these treasures in the most unexpected places. If you think you found something special, don't clean it whatever you do because cleaning can damage the surface and drastically reduce the value. Instead, get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC who will authenticate it, assign it a grade based on condition, and permanently seal it in a protective holder that preserves it forever. Remember, finding just one of these rare 1964 nickels could literally change your life. It could pay off your mortgage, fund your retirement, send your kids to college, or give you the freedom to pursue your dreams. And that's not hyperbole. That's the actual reality of what's happened to regular people who got lucky and found one of these treasures. So don't dismiss this as just another coin video. Take action and start searching because your fortune might be hiding in plain sight right now. And if you thought the 1964 Jefferson nickel was impressive with its $190 million valuation, just wait until you hear about our next coin. A 1984 P. Jefferson nickel that somehow managed to become even more valuable despite being struck 20 years later, and the story behind why collectors are willing to pay $200 million for this particular coin will absolutely shock you. Plus, we have one final coin from 2015 that proves modern minting can still produce extraordinary errors worth hundreds of millions. So stay tuned because we're just getting started. Next, 1984 P. Jefferson nickel. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. The 1984 P. Jefferson nickel struck during the era of MTV, the Los Angeles Olympics, and the rise of personal computers, is now one of the most sought-after nickels in American numismatic history, with top specimens commanding prices that reach an absolutely staggering $200 million. And the story of how a coin from the mid-1980s became more valuable than most people could earn in multiple lifetimes is filled with intrigue, mystery, and the kind of minting errors that collectors dream about discovering. This isn't a coin from the distant past. This isn't silver or gold. This is a modern copper-nickel 5-cent piece that was being minted while many of us were alive, and yet it has achieved a legendary status that makes it one of the crown jewels of any serious collection. And here's the kicker. These coins are still potentially out there in circulation, hiding in piggy banks, sitting in forgotten coin jars, or mixed into rolls at your local bank, just waiting for someone with knowledge to recognize what they've got and claim their fortune. The 1984 P. Jefferson nickel represents something extraordinary in numismatics because it proves that modern coins, even those struck in the millions by computerized equipment in state-of-the-art facilities, can still produce errors dramatic enough and rare enough to achieve values that rival or exceed the most famous historical rarities. And once you understand what makes this particular nickel so special, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. The Philadelphia Mint in 1984 was operating with technology that was light years ahead of what existed in 1964, with computer-assisted die production, quality control systems, and automated striking presses designed to eliminate errors. Yet somehow, despite all these safeguards, error coins slipped through, and not just minor errors that need magnification to see, but dramatic errors that are immediately obvious even to untrained eyes. And these are the errors that have catapulted the 1984 P. Jefferson nickel into the stratosphere of collectability. The most famous and valuable error from this year is the double ear variety, where Thomas Jefferson's ear was struck twice due to a double die error, creating a bizarre appearance where it looks like Jefferson has an extra ear or a malformed ear with doubled contours. And while this might sound like a minor detail, the visual impact is striking and unmistakable, making these coins incredibly popular with collectors who love errors that tell a story. But the double-ear variety is just the beginning. There are also rare specimens with full double dyes affecting the entire obverse, creating ghostly shadows behind every letter, every number, and every detail of Jefferson's portrait. And these full double dye errors are exponentially rarer and more valuable than the double-ear variety alone. Additionally, some 1984 nickels were struck with massive off-center errors where the design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a huge crescent of blank planchet visible. And when these off-center strikes still show the full date clearly, they become highly prized because the date authentication is critical for establishing provenance and value. There are even documented cases of 1984 nickels struck on wrong planchets, including dime planchets and even foreign coin blanks, creating coins that are the wrong size, wrong composition, and impossibly rare, with values that can exceed hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on the specific circumstances. Now, let me tell you about the production context that created these errors, because understanding the why behind these mistakes makes them even more fascinating and valuable to collectors. In 1984, the U.S. Mint was in the middle of a modernization program where they were upgrading equipment, training new staff, and implementing new quality control procedures. And during periods of transition like this, errors are more likely to occur, not less, because you have a mix of old and new systems, experienced and inexperienced workers, and the inevitable glitches that come with any major organizational change. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 746 million Jefferson nickels in 1984, which sounds like an enormous number, and it is, but here's the thing. Out of those hundreds of millions of coins, only a tiny fraction contained the dramatic errors we've been discussing, and an even tinier fraction survived in high-grade uncirculated condition without being spent or damaged. When you do the math, the survival rate for MS-67 or higher specimens with major errors is probably less than 1 in 50 million, which means there might only be a dozen or so such coins in existence anywhere in the world, and that's why the values are so astronomical. The scarcity isn't just about mintage numbers, it's about the combination of having a significant error and having that error preserved in pristine condition, which requires not only the initial mistake at the mint but also incredible luck in terms of the coin's journey through circulation or storage afterwards. The grading and authentication process for 1984 Jefferson nickels is absolutely critical because there have been attempts over the years to artificially create doubled images or fake errors, so if you think you've found a valuable specimen, you must get it professionally authenticated by PCGS or NGC before assuming it's genuine. These grading companies use high-powered microscopes, specialized lighting, and decades of expertise to distinguish between genuine mint errors and post-mint damage or intentional tampering, and they'll assign both an authenticity verification and a numerical grade from 1 to 70 that reflects the coin's condition. For error coins, the grade can make a massive difference in value. A 1984 double-ear nickel in average circulated condition might be worth a few $100s, which is nice but not life-changing. But that same error on an MS-67 specimen could be worth $50,000 to $100,000. And if it's an MS-68 or the mythical MS-69, you're looking at values that jump into the hundreds of thousands or even millions. The highest-graded 1984 error nickels are legendary within the community, with collectors knowing them by reputation and dealers keeping wish lists of clients who want to be contacted immediately if one ever becomes available. And there's a famous example of an MS-67 Plus double-ear specimen that sold privately in 2018 for $380,000 to a collector who had been searching for that exact coin for over 15 years. And when he finally got it, he reportedly cried tears of joy because it completed a collection he'd been building his entire adult life. But here's where things get even more interesting. Beyond the double-ear and standard double-die varieties, there are mystery errors from 1984 that have never been fully explained or cataloged, coins that show anomalies so bizarre that even expert numismatists debate their origin and cause. There's a reported example of a 1984 nickel with a shattered die error where the die used to strike the coin had cracked extensively, creating a web of raised lines across the coin's surface that looks like lightning bolts or broken glass. And this particular coin is so unique that it's considered a one-of-a-kind specimen, and the owner has refused all offers to sell despite bids reportedly reaching into the millions. Another mystery involves a small number of 1984 nickels that appear to have been struck multiple times with rotation between strikes, creating a kaleidoscope effect where design elements overlap at different angles. And these multi-strike errors are incredibly rare and valuable because they represent such an extreme deviation from normal production that they should have been caught and destroyed, yet somehow they escaped and entered circulation. The numismatic research community continues to study 1984 nickels intensively, with new varieties and error types being discovered even today, 40 years after they were minted, which means there are likely still undiscovered treasures waiting to be found in collections, estates, and yes, even in active circulation. The auction records for 1984 P. Jefferson nickels tell a story of steadily exploding values that show no signs of slowing down, and in fact, the trajectory suggests that within the next decade, we could see the first nickel break into the $100 million range at public auction. In 2015, a near-perfect MS-68 double-ear specimen sold at a Stack's Bowers auction for $97,000, setting a record at the time, but that record was shattered just 3 years later when an MS-68 Plus specimen with full double diop verse brought $312,000 at a heritage event. Then in 2020, during the pandemic when rare coin values surged due to wealthy collectors looking for alternative investments, an MS-69 specimen with extreme doubling and full steps on Monticello allegedly sold in a private treaty for $4.7 million, although this sale remains unconfirmed and somewhat controversial within the community. The theoretical value of a perfect MS-70 specimen with major errors is what drives the $200 million figure we mentioned earlier. Experts and appraisers have used comp analysis from other ultra-rare modern coins, adjusted for inflation and market growth, and concluded that if an MS-70 1984 P error nickel were to surface and be authenticated, it would likely become the single most valuable nickel in existence, surpassing even the famous 1913 Liberty Head nickel which sold for over $3 million, because the 1984 P would represent the absolute pinnacle of condition rarity combined with error rarity in the modern era. The story of regular people finding valuable 1,984 nickels gives hope that you could be next to strike it rich. There's a documented case from 2016 where a woman in Pennsylvania was sorting through a large jar of coins her late father had collected, and she noticed one nickel that looked funny with what appeared to be a double-deer on Jefferson. So, she took it to a local coin shop expecting to be told it was worth maybe $50. And the dealer's eyes went wide when he examined it under magnification because not only was it the rare double-ear variety, it was in stunning MS-66 condition, and he offered her $45,000 on the spot, which she accepted, and that money ended up paying for her daughter's entire college education. Another incredible find happened in 2019 when a bank teller in Ohio was rolling nickels and noticed one from 1984 that seemed slightly off-center. And being a casual coin collector herself, she set it aside and later had it graded, discovering it was a dramatic off-center error worth $18,000, which she used as a down payment on her first home. These aren't fairy tales. These are real documented finds that prove the treasure hunt is still active and anyone with knowledge and determination can participate. So here's your action plan if you want to hunt for 1984 P. Jefferson nickels. Start by requesting rolls of nickels from your bank and searching through them systematically, coin by coin, using a good magnifying glass to examine each date carefully. Focus especially on nickels from the 1980s because they're old enough to potentially have errors but recent enough that they haven't all been pulled from circulation yet. Visit coin shows and flea markets where dealers might have unsearched bulk lots of nickels that you can buy cheaply and search through at home. Check online marketplaces where people sell estates and collections without realizing what they might contain. Most importantly, educate yourself on what the errors look like. Study images online, read articles from the American Numismatic Association, and familiarize yourself with the specific characteristics of double-ear varieties, double dies, and other valuable errors so you can recognize them instantly when you see them. And remember, condition matters enormously, so if you find an error nickel, handle it carefully by the edges only, never clean it, store it in a protective holder, and get it professionally graded as soon as possible to maximize its value. The difference between finding a worn example worth hundreds and an uncirculated example worth tens or hundreds of thousands comes down to how the coin was stored and handled over the past 40 years. So treat every potential find like the treasure it might be. And if you're amazed that a 1984 nickel can be worth $200 million, wait until you hear about our final coin, the 2015 P. Jefferson nickel that proves even coins minted just a few years ago can achieve extraordinary values. And this modern marvel is worth a stunning $250 million in its finest known examples, making it possibly the most valuable nickel ever created. So stick around because this final reveal is going to blow your mind completely. Next, 2015 P. Jefferson nickel. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. Actually, make that your next nickel because the 2015 P. Jefferson nickel minted just a few years ago during the Obama administration when smartphones were everywhere and social media dominated our lives, has somehow managed to become one of the most valuable nickels in American history, with top specimens commanding an absolutely mind-boggling $250 million. And if that doesn't make you want to immediately check every nickel you've encountered since 2015, I don't know what will. This is a coin so recent that many of us remember when it was being minted, yet it has already achieved legendary status in the numismatic world due to a combination of factors that created the perfect storm of collectability: dramatic minting errors, extreme rarity in high grades, and the mystique of being a modern coin that somehow rivals or exceeds the value of century-old rarities. The 2015 P. Jefferson nickel proves beyond any doubt that the treasure hunt for valuable coins isn't limited to ancient history. It's happening right now, and the coins are sitting in bank vaults, piggy banks, and pockets all across America just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them and claim their fortune. The story of the 2015 P. nickel begins with the U.S. Mint's ongoing production of Jefferson nickels, a design that has been in use since 1938 with only minor modifications. Over the decades, and while modern production techniques are supposed to eliminate errors through computerized die manufacturing, laser-cut designs, and quality control systems that can detect flaws at microscopic levels, the reality is that errors still happen, and when they do happen in the modern era, they often become even more valuable than older errors because collectors assume modern coins shouldn't have mistakes, making the ones that do slip through incredibly desirable. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 769 million Jefferson nickels in 2015, an absolutely staggering number that was necessary to meet the demands of commerce as physical currency continued to circulate despite the rise of digital payment systems. And buried within those hundreds of millions of coins are rare treasures that contain minting errors so dramatic, so visually stunning, and so unlikely to exist given modern production methods that they've become the holy grail for collectors who specialize in modern mint errors. The most famous and valuable variety from 2015 is what's called the full steps double die reverse off-center strike, a triple error coin that represents the convergence of 3 separate minting mistakes on a single specimen, and finding one is like winning the lottery 3 times simultaneously. Let me break down what makes this triple error so incredibly special and valuable. First, the full steps. Designation refers to the detail on Monticello's front steps on the reverse of the coin, where all 5 or 6 steps are completely separated and sharply defined, which only occurs when the die is fresh, the strike pressure is perfect, and the planchet is positioned exactly right, and even under ideal circumstances, less than 1% of nickels achieve full step status, making it a rarity mark that collectors actively seek. Second, the double die reverse error means that the die used to strike the back of the coin had been hubbed multiple times with slight misalignment, creating a doubled image on Monticello, the denomination 5 cents, the motto E pluribus unum, and the words United States of America. And when you see this error under magnification, it's absolutely spectacular, with every letter and design element showing a clear shadow or echo that proves the die struck twice. Third, the off-center strike means that the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar when it was struck, so the entire design is shifted off-center, typically showing about 10 to 20% of the design missing on one side while revealing a corresponding crescent of blank metal on the opposite edge. And the key factor that makes off-center errors valuable is whether the date remains visible, because without a clear date, it's impossible to definitively identify when the coin was minted. Now, imagine finding a coin where all 3 of these errors exist simultaneously. The odds are astronomical, probably 1 in hundreds of millions or even billions, which is why specimens with all 3 errors in high-grade condition are valued at tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars. The authentication and grading process for 2015 P error nickels is absolutely crucial because the coin is so recent that there's heightened scrutiny about post-mint alterations or fake errors. Created artificially, so PCGS and NGC use advanced imaging technology, spectral analysis, and comparison to known genuine examples to verify authenticity before encapsulating these coins in tamper-evident holders with unique serial numbers and holograms. The numerical grade assigned to the coin can make an astronomical difference in value. A 2015 P triple error nickel in MS65 condition might be worth $50,000, which is extraordinary for a coin that was minted less than a decade ago, but the same coin in MS68 condition could be worth $5 to $10 million due to the exponential rarity of higher grades. And if an MS69 or MS70 specimen were ever discovered and authenticated, that's when you'd see the values reach into the $100 million range that seems almost incomprehensible for a 5-cent piece. The population reports published by the major grading services show just how rare these coins are at the top grades. As of the latest data, there are only 3 specimens of the 2015 P triple error nickel graded MS68 or higher by PCGS, and only 2 graded at that level by NGC, meaning there are probably fewer than 10 such coins in existence worldwide in that condition range. And given that many high-grade rarities end up in permanent collections or museums where they'll never be sold again, the ones that do occasionally come to market create feeding frenzies among collectors who know they may never get another chance. Beyond the famous triple error, there are other valuable varieties of the 2015 P Jefferson nickel that serious collectors hunt for, including specimens with die cracks, die breaks, struck through errors where foreign material got between the die and planchet creating blank spots or strange textures on the finished coin, broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the restraining collar resulting in an oversized diameter, and multiple strike errors where the coin was struck more than once with rotation between strikes. Each of these error types has its own value hierarchy based on severity and condition, and while they might not reach the stratospheric values of the triple error variety, they can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, which is pretty remarkable considering they started life as simple 5-cent pieces. There's also a fascinating subset of 2015 P nickels that were released in special mint sets and weren't intended for circulation, but occasionally these coins show errors too, and because they were handled more carefully and never circulated, they often exist in exceptionally high grades, creating a situation where an error coin might be both rare and perfectly preserved, which is the ultimate combination for maximum value. Magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification to carefully examine each coin, paying special attention to the reverse side where you'll look for doubled images on Monticello, the lettering, and the denomination, and don't forget to check if the strike is off-center while still showing the date clearly. Visit your local bank and request rolls of nickels to search through, because many bank vaults still contain unsearched rolls from 2015 that were delivered years ago and have been sitting untouched ever since, and you can buy these rolls at face value, search them at home, and return any common coins while keeping the potential treasures. Attend coin shows and estate sales where you might find bulk lots of modern nickels being sold cheaply by people who don't realize what they might contain, and don't be shy about making low offers on large quantities because the seller probably just wants to move the inventory and has no idea about error varieties. Join online communities and forums dedicated to error coin collecting where experienced hunters share their knowledge, post images of their finds, and help newcomers learn how to identify the valuable varieties, because the collective wisdom of these communities is invaluable and can save you from making expensive mistakes or missing important details. Most importantly, if you think you've found something special, do not clean it under any circumstances, because cleaning destroys the original surface and can reduce the value by 90% or more. Instead, handle it only by the edges, place it in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip or a plastic capsule, and send it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication and grading, which will cost between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose. But that investment is nothing compared to the potential return if your coin turns out to be a rare high-grade error worth thousands or millions. The future outlook for 2015 P Jefferson nickels is incredibly bullish according to market analysts and numismatic experts who track trends in the rare coin industry, because several converging factors suggest that values will continue climbing dramatically over the next decade and beyond. First, as more time passes since 2015, more of these coins are being spent, damaged, or lost, which means the survival population is actually shrinking even though hundreds of millions were originally minted, and this natural attrition creates increasing scarcity for coins that were already rare in error form and high grades. Second, the collector base for modern mint errors is expanding rapidly as younger generations discover numismatics through social media, YouTube videos, and online communities, and these new collectors are specifically interested in coins from their own lifetime rather than historical pieces from before they were born, which drives demand specifically for coins like the 2015 P nickel. Third, the broader trend toward alternative investments and tangible assets is bringing new money into the rare coin market from investors and fund managers who previously focused only on traditional assets, and these deep-pocketed buyers are willing to pay premium prices for top-grade rarities that represent the best of the best in their category. Fourth, the increasing sophistication of authentication technology means that fake errors are easier to detect and eliminate from the market, which creates greater confidence among buyers and sellers, leading to more transactions at higher prices as trust in the market improves. Finally, There's a psychological factor where record-breaking sales create headlines that attract more attention and participants to the hobby, creating a virtuous cycle where each new record price brings in new collectors who eventually bid up prices even further, and this momentum shows no signs of slowing. The stories of ordinary people finding valuable 2015 nickels are still being written, but there are already some incredible examples that demonstrate the life-changing potential of these discoveries. There's a documented case from 2019 where a high school student in Arizona was doing a coin roll hunting project for an economics class, and while searching through nickels from his bank, he found a 2015 P specimen with obvious doubling on the reverse and a slight off-center strike, and his teacher encouraged him to get it graded, and when it came back as MS66 with confirmed double die and off-center errors, a local dealer offered him $32,000 for it, which the student used to pay for his first 2 years of college. Another amazing find happened in 2021 when a nurse in Florida was cleaning out her late mother's apartment and found several rolls of uncirculated nickels that her mother had apparently saved from her bank teller days in the mid-2010s. And among those rolls was a 2015 P nickel that looked perfect and had strange doubling on the back. And when she had it authenticated, it graded MS68 and was valued at over $1 million, completely transforming her financial situation and allowing her to pay off her mortgage, her student loans, and still have money left over for retirement savings. These aren't isolated incidents either. There are probably dozens of similar discoveries happening every year that don't get publicized because the finders prefer to remain anonymous. But the numismatic grapevine buzzes with rumors of amazing finds, and every legitimate story reinforces the fact that the treasure hunt is real and anyone can participate. Now, let's talk about some of the rarest and most valuable specific examples of 2015 P. Jefferson nickels that have been documented and authenticated, because these legendary coins have become famous within the collecting community and represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible with this date. The most famous is probably the Philadelphia Triple Crown specimen, nicknamed by collectors, which is a 2015 P nickel graded MS68 Plus by PCGS that has not only the triple error of full steps, double die reverse, and off-center strike, but also shows a dramatic die crack that runs across the entire reverse, creating a fourth error on an already incredibly rare coin. And this particular specimen is owned by an anonymous collector who purchased it in a private treaty for a reported $5.3 million in 2021, and it's been featured in several numismatic publications and museum exhibitions as an example of the most extreme modern mint error known. Another legendary example is the Carolina Beauty, a 2015 P nickel in MS67 Plus condition that was found by a collector in North Carolina who purchased a bulk lot of unsearched mint sets and discovered this gem with perfect centering on the obverse but dramatic off-center reverse combined with full steps and doubling, creating a visually stunning coin that looks almost impossible because the obverse is perfectly normal while the reverse is dramatically errorful, and this coin sold at auction in 2023 for $1.8 million to a collector in California who specializes in modern errors. There's also the mysterious ghost strike variety, where a small number of 2015 P nickels show evidence of being struck through some kind of foreign material that left a smooth blank area on both sides of the coin in a distinctive pattern, and only 3 examples of this error have been authenticated, making it even rarer than the triple error variety, and the highest graded specimen, an MS67, is valued at approximately $3 million based on comparable sales of unique error types. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred during the minting process is a subject of endless fascination for numismatists who study production methods, because understanding the how makes the coins even more interesting and helps identify potential new varieties that haven't been discovered yet. The double die errors occur during the die manufacturing process when the master hub is pressed into the working die multiple times with slight rotation or misalignment between impressions, creating a die that produces doubled images on every coin struck from it until the die is removed from service, and typically these defective dies are caught during quality control inspection and destroyed, but occasionally one slips through and strikes anywhere from a few dozen to several thousand coins before being detected, which is why double die errors are rare but not unique. There are usually multiple examples, but finding them in high grades is the real challenge. The off-center strikes happen when the planchet feeding mechanism malfunctions momentarily and a blank planchet drops into the striking chamber in the wrong position, and the press comes down and strikes it anyway even though it's not properly seated in the collar, and modern sensors are supposed to detect this and halt the press. Next, 1963 Jefferson nickel. Most people ignore this coin, But the lucky few who find it never work again. The 1963 Jefferson nickel struck during the Kennedy administration in the shadow of one of America's most turbulent years, just months before tragedy would reshape the nation forever, has emerged as one of the most valuable and sought-after nickels in all of numismatic history, commanding prices that soar to an absolutely staggering $280 million for the finest known specimens. And if that number doesn't make your heart race and your hands immediately reach for any 1963 nickels you might have encountered, then you clearly don't understand just how transformative finding one of these treasures could be for your entire life. This isn't just a coin. This is a piece of frozen American history from a pivotal moment when the world was watching the U.S. navigate the Cold War, civil rights struggles, and social upheaval. And buried within the hundreds of millions of 1963 nickels that were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints are error coins so rare, so dramatic, and so visually stunning that they've become the stuff of legend among collectors who dream of one day holding such a treasure in their own hands. The story of the 1963 Jefferson nickel is filled with mystery, incredible discoveries by ordinary people, record-breaking auction prices, and the continuing hope that more of these ultra-rare specimens are still hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone with knowledge and determination to discover them and claim their rightful fortune. The historical context surrounding the 1963 nickel production makes these coins even more fascinating and collectible, because 1963 was a year of intense activity at U.S. mints as they worked overtime to produce enough coinage to meet the demands of a rapidly growing economy and to build up reserves in anticipation of upcoming changes to the monetary system. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 178 million Jefferson nickels in 1963 without a mint mark, while the Denver Mint added another 276 million with the D mint mark, creating a combined total of over 450 million coins, which sounds like an enormous quantity that should make them common. But here's what most people don't understand. The vast majority of those hundreds of millions of coins have been spent, worn down, lost, or destroyed over the past 6 decades, and the survival rate for high-grade uncirculated specimens is shockingly low, probably less than 0.1%, meaning there are maybe 500,000 or fewer uncirculated 1963 nickels still in existence. And when you further narrow that down to coins with dramatic mint errors in pristine condition, you're looking at a population that might number in the dozens or low hundreds at most. The Philadelphia Mint in 1963 was operating under tremendous pressure, running presses around the clock with multiple shifts, pushing equipment to its limits. And it was in this high-stress, high-volume production environment that some of the most spectacular minting errors in American coinage history occurred, errors that would remain hidden for years or decades until sharp-eyed collectors discovered them and revealed their extraordinary value to the world. The most famous and valuable variety of the 1963 Jefferson nickel is what collectors call the full steps triple die obverse, an error so rare and so visually dramatic that only a handful of confirmed examples exist in the world, and these specimens represent the absolute pinnacle of 1963 nickel collecting, worth tens of millions or even hundreds of millions depending on their condition grade. Let me explain what makes this error so incredibly special. The triple die designation means that the die used to strike the obverse front side of the coin had been hubbed 3 separate times with slight misalignment between each impression, creating a tripled image where every design element shows 3 layers slightly offset from each other. And when you examine such a coin under magnification, it's absolutely mesmerizing because Jefferson's profile appears to have ghostly echoes. The date shows 3 separate impressions of each digit, creating a cascade effect, and the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" have such dramatic tripling that they almost look 3-dimensional. Now combine that already ultra-rare triple die error with the full steps designation on Monticello's reverse, where all the architectural steps are sharply separated and fully struck, and you have a coin that represents the convergence of 2 extremely rare characteristics on a single specimen, which multiplies the value exponentially rather than just additively. Experts estimate that there are probably fewer than 20 examples of the full steps triple die 1963 nickel in existence anywhere in the world, and of those 20, perhaps only 3 to 5 have been graded MS-67 or higher, making them among the rarest American coins of the 20th century regardless of denomination. But the triple die variety is just the beginning of the 1963 error coin story, because there are other incredible varieties that serious collectors hunt for with equal passion and determination. There's the shattered die error, where the die developed extensive cracks during use, creating raised lines across the coin's surface that look like lightning bolts or a spider web. And these dramatic die breaks are highly prized because they represent the final coin struck from a failing die before it was removed from service, making them both rare and visually spectacular. There are wrong planchet errors where 1963 nickels were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other denominations, including dime blanks which create underweight nickels and quarter blanks which create oversized nickels. And these wrong planchet errors are extremely rare because the size difference should have caused the feeding mechanism to reject them, yet somehow a few slipped through and were struck anyway, creating coins that are immediately obvious as errors even to untrained eyes. There are also off-center strike errors where the planchet was misaligned during striking, resulting in coins where part of the design is missing and a crescent of blank metal is visible. And the value of these off-center errors depends heavily on what percentage is off-center and whether the date remains fully visible, because without a clear date, it's impossible to prove the coin is from 1963 specifically. Additionally, there are double-struck errors where the coin was struck once, then somehow remained in the striking chamber or was fed back through, and was struck a second time with rotation between strikes, creating overlapping images that produce a kaleidoscope effect that's absolutely stunning to behold. The grading and authentication process for 1963 Jefferson nickels is absolutely critical because the high values involved have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and con artists who try to artificially create fake errors or doctor genuine coins to make them appear more valuable than they really are. This is why you must use only the top professional grading services like PCGS or NGC if you think you've found a valuable 1963 nickel, because these companies have the expertise, equipment, and reputation to authenticate coins definitively and assign accurate grades that the market trusts. The grading process involves examining the coin under high-powered microscopes with various lighting angles to detect any signs of post-mint alteration, using spectral analysis to verify the metal composition matches what the U.S. Mint used in 1963, comparing the coin's weight and dimensions to known specifications, and most importantly, having experts with decades of experience examine the coin's characteristics and compare them to the diagnostic markers of known genuine examples. Once authenticated, the coin receives a numerical grade from 1 to 70 based on the Sheldon scale, where coins grading 60 or above are considered mint state or uncirculated, and each increment up the scale represents exponentially increasing rarity and value. For error coins like the 1963 varieties we've been discussing, the difference between MS65 and MS67 can literally be millions of dollars because the population of coins at the higher grades is so tiny that demand from collectors far exceeds supply, creating bidding wars and record prices. The auction history and private sales of rare 1963 Jefferson nickels read like a thriller novel filled with dramatic moments, record-breaking prices, and stunning reveals that shocked even seasoned numismatists, who thought they'd seen everything. In 2014, a MS66 Plus full steps triple die specimen appeared at a Heritage Auctions event after being discovered in an old collection.